This last April, we just opened up our brand new 1904 World's Fair exhibit. We've had World's Fair exhibits up in the past. Our last World's Fair exhibit had opened in 2004, and we closed it in 2023. So it was up for 19 years. That exhibit was kind of ready to come down. We also wanted to update our storytelling and tell new stories about the fair, tell stories that you maybe have heard before in different ways. So we reimagined this entire World's Fair space, and really what we wanted to do is help people both relive the wonder of the 1904 World's Fair and re-examine the complexity of the 1904 World's Fair. It was really about drilling down into those stories that we know people expect to hear, and how can we change those stories, tell with new angles. How can we approach them differently? Or how can we look for artifacts and photographs and things that can help us to tell new stories? And how can we get people to feel like they're experiencing, the wonder of the fair in some ways? So be thinking about things like ice cream cones and Ferris wheels and all those stories you've heard about at the same time that you're thinking about things like the Philippine Village, where over 1,000 people were brought and had their lives and bodies put on display. Because the World's Fair is both of those things at the same time. So in order to do that, we got out over 200 artifacts from our own collections to help us tell those stories. And we also created this scale model that shows, every building, every pathway that was at the World's Fair. It's at about a 1 to 400 scale, and it helps you be able to orient yourself at the fair and figure out where all these stories that you've heard about came from. This was the statue of St. Louis, and it was built to be temporary, but people liked it so much because if you were meeting someone at the fair, you came through the main gate. This was pretty easy to get to. So people would meet at that statue all the time. So after the fair was over, they had it cast in bronze and moved up to the top of Art Hill. And then this building right here is Festival Hall. This was the building they thought was the grandest and most opulent building at the fair. It was a huge auditorium. It could seat like over 3,000 people. It had the largest pipe organ in the world, so they would do concerts and speeches and things in there. They were so concerned the art museum would be the plainest and ugliest building at the fair that they hid it behind Festival Hall. So if you came to this gate and were meeting someone at the statue here and looked up the Grand Basin, you wouldn't be able to see the art museum at all. Every 15 minutes or so, a new overlay comes down, and it's sort of a Google Earth image of what's there today. So you can see some landmarks pretty easily, 4064 and Skinker, and then you can start to, place houses and things at the zoo and stuff like that. So you can really get a sense of where the fair was in St. Louis. We were able to animate some sort of dynamism into the model. There's little people sort of walking around. There's one of the hands on the floral clock in front of the agriculture building actually moves. There's trains running along the tracks. There's hot air balloons. There's boats in the Grand Basin. There's birds flying overhead. There's cloud cover. So there's all sorts of things happening on the models. The fair is one of the most important events in St. Louis's history, right? It changed Forest Park. People didn't go sledding down Art Hill until after the World's Fair, after that land was cleared. It turned that sort of western half of the park into the space where now there's an art museum and a zoo and a history museum and a golf course and all those things that people like to do in that half of the park. It's something that affected the built environment in St. Louis. It's something that affected the water in St. Louis. It's something that still has an impact here today and still affects all of our lives.